The Blind Girl and Her Wicked Stepmother. In the vibrant village of Umidike, nestled between lush hills and a sparkling river, there lived a young blind girl named Adeabi. Although she couldn't see the world around her, Adeabi possessed a rare beauty. Her ebony skin glistened in the sunlight, and her coiled hair rested in perfect spirals adorned with beads passed down from her late mother. But the real beauty was her voice. Her singing, sweet and haunting, could stop even the busiest villagers in their tracks. It wasn't just her voice that was captivating, her spirit was radiant. Despite her blindness and the cruelty she faced, Adeabi remained resilient, her heart full of hope and strength. But Adeabi's life was far from easy. After her mother died under mysterious circumstances, her father, Nana, remarried a woman named Ifeoma. Ifeoma was not just anyone, she had been Adeabi's mother's closest friend. What no one knew was that Ifeoma harbored a secret jealousy toward Adeabi's mother. She was envious of her beauty and of the love that Nana showered upon her. Consumed by this jealousy, Ifeoma turned to dark magic, and it was through this magic that she ended Adeabi's mother's life. Now that Adeabi's mother was gone, Ifeoma took her place in the home and ensnared Nana's heart with a love spell. Though she appeared kind on the surface, her true colors showed when Nana was away. Each morning, as he left the house for his long business trips, Ifeoma's sweet smile would fade into a sneer. Her voice, once melodic and charming in Nana's presence, became sharp and cruel. "You're nothing but a burden," Ifeoma would say to Adeabi, her voice dripping with malice. "Blind and useless. You should be grateful I allow you to live under this roof." She forced Adeabi to do all the housework, sweeping the floors, scrubbing pots until her hands were raw, washing the family's clothes, and even fetching water from the river despite her blindness. Day after day, Adeabi toiled from dawn until dusk, her body aching from exhaustion. But no matter how much she worked, Ifeoma was never satisfied. The worst part of it all was that whenever Adeabi tried to tell her father about Ifeoma's cruelty, he refused to believe her. "Don't be ridiculous, Adeabi," Nana would say, shaking his head. "Ifeoma loves you like her own daughter. You're imagining things." What Adeabi didn't know was that Ifeoma used her magic to cloud Nana's judgment. Under the spell, he couldn't see the wickedness in Ifeoma's heart, and he remained blind to the abuse his daughter endured. Despite everything, Adeabi never lost hope. Her one escape was her voice. Whenever the weight of her burdens became too much to bear, she would sing. Her voice, filled with emotion and hope, would rise through the walls of her home and drift out into the village. The villagers who passed by would stop in their tracks, captivated by the sound. "Who is that singing?" they would ask in wonder. "It must be a spirit," some would say. No human voice could be that beautiful. But it wasn't a spirit, it was Adeabi, pouring her heart into every note, finding solace in her song. Singing was her way of staying connected to her late mother, who used to sing to her as a child. It was through her songs that she felt her mother's presence, and it gave her the strength to endure. Meanwhile, Ifeoma, always cunning, took advantage of the attention Adeabi's voice attracted. She told the villagers that it was her daughter, Neka, who had the gift of song. Neka, fair-skinned like her mother, was beautiful but vain and talentless. She tried to mimic Adeabi's songs, standing in front of the mirror and singing with all her might, but her voice lacked the magic that Adeabi's had. Neka is blessed by the gods, Ifeoma would boast to anyone who would listen. Her voice will bring great honor to our family. The villagers, unaware of the truth, believed her. Soon, all of Umidek thought that Neka was the mysterious singer who had captivated the village. But Adeabi knew the truth, and while it had had to be overshadowed by Neka, she stayed silent. She didn't sing for fame or glory, she sang because it was her only escape. One day, news arrived in the village that the king had organized a grand singing competition. The winner of this competition would not only receive riches but would also marry the prince. Singers from all over the kingdom were invited, and the competition would last for 3 days. For Ifeoma, this was the perfect opportunity to elevate Neka's status. She wasted no time preparing her daughter for the event, and over the next few days, Neka practiced relentlessly. But despite her efforts, she couldn't capture the magic of Adeabi's voice. Still, Ifeoma's determination didn't falter. A little more practice, and you will outshine them all, Ifeoma reassured Neka, though deep down, she had her doubts. On the first day of the competition, the palace square was filled with villagers eager to witness the event. The king and the prince sat on grand thrones, adorned in their regal attire, ready to hear the kingdom's finest voices. Neka, dressed in elaborate clothing, took the stage and began to sing. Her voice was pleasant, but it was far from extraordinary. The crowd remained polite but unimpressed. The king looked on, his expression unreadable, while the prince showed little interest. The second day was no different. Neka sang again, but her performance fell flat. Whispers began to spread through the crowd, questioning whether the rumors of the divine voice were just exaggerations. The king grew impatient, his hopes for the competition dwindling. As the third and final day approached, Adeabi sat alone in her room, listening to the sound of Neka's rehearsals. A deep sadness filled her heart, not because she wanted to be on that stage, but because she felt the weight of her isolation. She sang to herself softly, her voice echoing through the walls. Little did she know, her singing had caught the ear of a kind old villager passing by. The old woman had heard the rumors of Neka's voice but had always felt something was amiss. Now, as she listened to the beautiful song coming from Adeabi's home, she realized the truth. "This is the voice that must be heard by the king," she whispered to herself. On the morning of the final day, the old woman came to Adeabi's home and knocked on the door. She greeted Ifeoma with a knowing smile. "I've come to take your daughter to the competition," she said. Ifeoma, thinking she meant Neka, smiled and said, "Of course, she's been practicing all week." But the old woman shook her head and pointed to Adeabi. "This is the daughter I'm here for," she said firmly. Ifeoma's face twisted in anger, but before she could protest, the old woman took Adeabi's hand and led her out of the house. Adeabi, confused but trusting, followed the woman through the village toward the competition. As they approached the palace, the crowd fell silent. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is this the true singer of Umidike?" they asked. "Could it be the blind girl?" The king raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the sudden shift in the crowd's attention. The prince, too, leaned forward, his eyes locked on Adeabi as she was guided to the stage. Her simple attire and quiet presence were a stark contrast to Neka's extravagant display. With her heart pounding, Adeabi stood before the king and the crowd. The old woman gave her a reassuring nod, and with a deep breath, Adeabi began to sing. Her voice soared through the air, rich with emotion and power. Every note she sang carried the weight of her struggles, her hopes, and her dreams. The crowd was mesmerized. The prince, his eyes wide with amazement, couldn't take his gaze off her. Even the king, who had grown weary of the competition, sat up in his throne, captivated by the beauty of Adeabi's voice. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence before the crowd erupted into applause. The king stood, and the prince approached Adeabi, gently taking her hand. "This is the voice I've been waiting for," the prince said, his voice filled with admiration. "You are the true winner of this competition." Ifeoma, standing in the crowd, fumed with rage as she watched her plans crumble before her eyes. But it was too late. Adeabi had captured the hearts of everyone, including the prince. The competition ended, and Adeabi was declared the winner. Nneka, humiliated and bitter, retreated with her mother, but their grip over Adeabi's life had been broken. In the days that followed, Adeabi's life changed. The prince called for the village priest to lift the dark magic that had clouded her father's mind, and Nana, finally free from Ifeoma's spell, wept with guilt for not believing his daughter. He begged for her forgiveness, and Adeabi, with her kind heart, forgave him. The village rejoiced in Adeabi's triumph, and soon a grand celebration was held in her honor. As the prince and Adeabi stood before the people of Umidike, the priest performed a sacred ritual, and with a flash of light, Adeabi's sight was restored. For the first time, Adeabi opened her eyes and saw the world around her, the green hills, the shimmering river, and the faces of those who had come to love her. She saw her father, his eyes filled with tears of joy, and finally, she saw the prince, who looked at her not with pity, but with love and admiration. Together, Adeabi and the prince were wed, and their love story became one of the most cherished tales in the history of Umidike. As for Ifeoma and Nneka, they were banished from the village, never to return. And so, Adeabi, the blind girl who had been wronged, became a queen, loved and respected by all. Her voice, once a secret kept within the walls of her home, was now celebrated by the entire kingdom. And as she stood beside her prince, she knew that her mother's spirit was still with her, watching over her, proud of the woman she had become. Remember, no matter how difficult life may seem, kindness, resilience, and hope always triumph in the end. Adeabi's journey teaches us that true strength comes from within, and with a heart full of courage, anything is possible. Thank you for listening, and may this story of Adeabi inspire you to never lose faith in the power of love and perseverance.